So this happened a few nights back now. I live in the suburbs of Northern California with my parents in an upper middle class neighborhood. My parents are away for their anniversary, so I've had the place to myself for just about a week. So I got home from a late shift at work around 1 a.m. I head inside, shower, and I head to the kitchen to make some buffalo wings for dinner. I crack open a beer and sit in front of the TV. I was sifting through movies to watch on HBO Plus when, all of a sudden, my doorbell rings. It actually startled me to the point that I jumped off the couch, knocking my beer over in the process. It's now 2 a.m., and there was no good reason for anyone to be at the door at this hour. I just stared in the direction of the front door for several seconds before it rang again, followed by rapid knocking on both the door and the accompanying window. Now, for whatever reason, I was no longer scared, but more annoyed at the fact that some idiot would think it's an appropriate time to be banging on someone's front door. I head over to it, unlock the deadbolt, and pull the front door open, leaving just the chain in place. In the heat of the moment, I didn't think to look out the window first. I just yanked the door open. Well, standing on my front porch was a woman, around mid-20s, long, silky black hair, and a purple hoodie with black pants. I said, "Can I help you?" To which she responded with, "Yeah, sorry to bother you so late, but my boyfriend and I are having some car trouble, and our phones are dead. We were wondering if you could possibly let us use yours." She pointed up the street to a dark-colored sedan parked underneath the street lamp and said, "See, that's us right there." Now, had this been any other person, I'd have said no, but she looked innocent, like she was a college student. I live in a college town, actually, and it wasn't uncommon for college kids to be out late on a Friday night. I asked her where her boyfriend was, and she said that he walked to the gas station to see if anyone had a phone there. I pulled my iPhone out and told her to make it quick, as I was about to go to bed. She thanked me and said she'd only take 2 seconds. She took the phone and dialed a number and put the phone up to her ear. After a couple of rings, whoever she called picked up and she said, "Yeah, it's me. I'm borrowing someone's phone." She stopped talking and I could just barely make out a man's voice on the other end. Now, at this point, I start to feel a bit uneasy. She was taking a lot longer to be done with the phone call, and I started to get impatient. The whole time, she just stood there staring at me with a wide-eyed expression and this creepy half smile that looked forced, all while this person on the other end kept talking. She finally said, "Okay, bye," and handed me my phone back. As I was about to close the door, she then said, "Do you think I might be able to come inside to use your bathroom?" I said no and wished her good luck before shutting the front door. Right as I was about to walk away, I heard her laugh and say, "You made the right choice." I looked out the peephole and she was still standing on my porch, but now she had a man standing next to her. He looked to be around her age and was wearing a hoodie with a half pulled down face mask. The pair then started to circle around my house, banging on windows and laughing their hearts out. I didn't hesitate to call 911 at this point. They stuck around for a few minutes trying to get in through my back door. I had my Glock 19 in hand, aimed right at the door with 911 on speaker, and I was prepared to do whatever I had to do if they got in. They banged on that door for around 5 minutes before they finally left. I actually watched them run up the street to that same black sedan that I mentioned earlier and watched them take off. So much for car troubles, right? The cops showed up a few minutes later and took a report. They told me that I was the third person to call them that night, reporting a suspicious couple attempting to enter homes. I don't know what they had planned, but I'm inclined to believe that it was nothing nice. Moral of the story here is never answer the front door at 2 a.m., especially without looking out to see who it is first. I learned my lesson that night. While I've had a few close calls in my life, as many women do, this one still haunts me, as I'm usually hypervigilant. But I came up against a pro. This happened about 15 years ago now. We were living in a rental house in a quaint village in Southern California. While it was in a residential neighborhood, It was a few blocks away from the downtown village area. The area was filled with shops, restaurants, and bars, along with an active trolley station not far from a state college, Old Hollywood. There was always some activity going on, as our street was a cut through to the action. People coming and going, especially college kids. Even ringing our doorbell wasn't unusual. I was in the habit of jogging at night, but only with my German Shepherd Rottweiler mix, named Bear. He was an intimidating looking dog, although well trained, a former police dog and rescue. He had settled in well to domestic life. He was very friendly unless you either gave him a reason not to be, or he sensed something about you that was not right. He could not stand my ex-husband, for example, but he loved my current husband, so he was an amazing judge of character. His instincts were always dead on. Any attention I got after sundown jogging was almost always discouraged once they saw Bear, and wisely so. One night as I ran past the trolley station, this young goofy guy sporting a beanie, a lope, and who obviously had never run further than up to his weed dealer, tried to keep up with us while we ran. He kept asking where I lived, and if he could come over and give me a kiss. It was a bit comical, so I firmly yelled back for him to f*** off, and Bear dissuaded him by a short showing of teeth and a growl as we ran. Enough said. We never even had to break stride. When I got home, I told my husband. He scowled and suggested I check out the sex offender website and see if this guy was on there. The loping wannabe lover was not there, but I recognized someone I did have an experience with. I genuinely felt a chill run across the hair on my arms and up the back of my neck. It was the ficus plant guy who had stopped by the house just a few days before. Ficus plant guy was an older Hispanic man, tall and thin, dressed in a filthy gray work jumper with the name tag torn off. He had a gray white beard to match his jumper, and gray, greasy, unkempt, longish hair. This guy had leather skin and a hound dog expression. Every deep wrinkle on his face, of which there were many, bore a testament to an unpleasant life entrenched in misery. This was back in December of that year, drizzling early morning, and my husband had just left for work. Our house was set back slightly off the street, but still visible from it. There was an unlocked gate across the driveway about 10 feet from the back kitchen door. The kitchen door had a large glass pane, and next to it was a large kitchen window that ran nearly the length of the wall. It was bright and airy. I could clearly see out to the street, and any passerby could see into our kitchen, especially past the gate. I was in the living room, out of sight, having just poured my first cup of hot coffee. Bear was curled up in his bed by the fireplace, in full view of the kitchen window and door. Now, think Norman Rockwell. I heard a rattle of the kitchen door. I assumed my husband had come back, but wasn't able to get in for some reason. So I wasn't exactly alarmed, at least at first. But Bear absolutely seemed to be. I wondered why my husband didn't use his key. I realized that whoever was at the kitchen door chose to avoid the front door with a bell and had let themselves into and past the closed gate. Having done so, they could easily access the backyard and open the French doors where I was sitting. But who would do that? So I quickly got up to investigate. As I made my way to the door, I was surprised to see Ficus Plant Guy, who I'll refer to as FPG from here on out, who cut a sorrowful yet imposing figure pressed against our door, peering in through cupped hands. Bear had sprung up to his feet at this point and ran into the kitchen, getting to the door before I could get there. He was barking and growling menacingly. Incredulously, I spoke through the glass door to FPG, now feeling my spidey senses kick in because Bear wasn't going to back down. So I chose to not open the door at first. Instead, I asked FPG through the glass a haughty, "Can I help you?" Manifesting Eeyore, he asked if we had a ficus plant in our backyard. This threw me off at the time. I didn't even know what a ficus plant looked like, so I told him, "No, I don't think so." There were no plants back there that weren't in the ground, and it was all very typical SoCal flora or palm trees. I was a little put off by the temerity of someone coming into our yard, past our gate, and jiggling our kitchen door as he hid, and initially, my demeanor was more terse and guarded, and try as I may, I could not get Bear to stop bark growling, which was now irritating me. But I returned Bear's unusual display of disobedience with annoyance and commands to be quiet, instead of paying attention to what it really meant. My bad, Bear. FPG was unaffected by my vicious beast and my tone, so he persisted. His pursuit of the ficus plant was as determined as it was touching. The plant, it seemed, belonged to his dying mother, who he claimed had once lived in this house. She had left it behind, but it meant a lot to her, and he was hoping he could retrieve it for her. I told him again there was no ficus plant in our backyard, none that I was aware of. Is it potted or hanging? He couldn't tell me. Is it a mature plant? He didn't say. Does it flower? He was now losing patience. He just wanted me to either let him in or give him permission to explore the back. Eventually, I began to feel sorry for this guy. He was sort of a pitiful figure, and I didn't want to appear callous or prejudiced because of his ethnicity or disheveled state. So that's when I went to open the door. In a fury never seen before or again, my black and tan 90-pound dog threw himself at the doorknob, knocking my hand away and knocking me off balance. "Bear," I shouted. "Be quiet." But he would have none of it. Ignoring me, he barked like he was a German POW guard dog, spotting runners at the wall. Showing teeth and snarling, I once again moved Bear aside and told him to go to his place. Indignant and growling, he slowly edged towards his bed, backwards, never taking his eyes off FPG. I apologized and tried to get more information from him, sincerely wanting to help this sad specimen of humanity before me, but it was hard to hear him through the glass. So once again, I went to open the door. He had even pulled the screen door open. He no longer seemed a threat to me, more an object of pity. As I went to unlock the door and grasp the handle again, from behind me came a rolling, running, menacing ball of canine fury and hate, charging like a hound from hell toward fresh meat. Mongrel barks shot out in a cacophony of rapid succession. With snarling, snorting teeth, Bear knocked my hand away and me to the floor. He threw himself against the glass, barking and snapping at FPG through it, sure to tear him to shreds, but for the few inches of tempered glass between them. I was shocked, angry, and apologetic all at once. FPG was unfazed, completely ignoring the beast before him. I was as much unnerved by FPG's lack of reaction as I was by Bear's focused fury. At this point, I thought, maybe I shouldn't open the door. Yeah, you think? Once I got Bear down to a low roar, I suggested that FPG give me his name and phone number, and I would ask my landlord if such a plant had ever existed. If so, I'd call him and make arrangements for him to pick it up. While my hellhound didn't dissuade him, my request for his name and number did. Nope, he muttered, shaking his head as he made his way down the steps and out the gate. "It's okay, I don't mind," I responded. He said something in Spanish as he limped away with a little giddy-up across the lawn and down the street to his vehicle. A van. A blue, roughly hand-painted with a kitchen broom van. An old U-Haul with a blacked-out passenger window. Then, and only then, did Bear stop his tirade and jauntily plot back to his bed, tail up, with an air of mission accomplished about him. What the hell had just happened? I muttered to myself. Oh well, and now my damn coffee was cold. So imagine my surprise when a week later, when looking for a loping wannabe lover on the sex offender website, I happened across FPG. He had an unmistakable, unforgettable face and demeanor, and we had done the back and forth dance for about 15 minutes, so I got a good look. He was convicted, a sexual predator, in fact. Multiple arrests for talking his way into homes, no forced entry. Homes where a woman was their home alone. Tying them up and having his way with them. brutalizing them in unspeakable ways, often with foreign objects, torturing them for hours on end. As of that moment, the police had no idea where he was, but his last known location was the village where I lived. But for my sweet, loyal, fearless, and fearsome, very, very good German Shepherd Roddy mix, Bear Dog, I would have gotten to know FPG much, much better that day. I'm guessing there was never any ficus plant. And no, let's not meet ever. So this story happened to me when I was 15 years old. I was a super lonely kid. My home life was in shambles. Mom was cheating on Dad and told me about it. And I had just started at a new high school the year prior where I didn't know a soul. Creating art quickly became my biggest coping mechanism. And to this day, I still love to draw. At the time, I discovered the website DeviantArt and started submitting my drawings every day. Through this, I made some friends online of all ages. Some very talented people were giving me positive feedback on my work, and this really inspired me. In my depression, I felt like DA was a safe haven of like-minded people who appreciated one another. For the first time in a long time, I belonged somewhere. I spent many hours talking to some regulars on the site. Even now, almost 20 years later, a few of them are still in my life, and I cherish their friendships. But this story is about someone who I never, ever want to meet. DeviantArt also allowed writers to submit their stories or poetry to the site. One day, I was on the front page and a poem caught my eye. It was more of an angry rant, actually, full of weird, twisted imagery and anti-Christian subtext. Sounds stupid, I know, but it was actually quite well written and funny, at least to my 15-year-old self. Being a very angry, depressed high schooler, I was drawn in and decided to check this artist out. Not only was he a prolific writer with maybe 100 poems and stories on his site, but this man was a very talented visual artist as well. He created amazing illustrations of weird, funny creatures. Some of them were a little sexual, like naked women, but most of them were more humorous or gross. His name was Tom. The combination of Tom's writing and visual art skills intrigued me. Even though he was 30 years old, I decided to send him a private message. We bonded. Soon, we began to talk on AOL Instant Messenger. I would look forward to talking to Tom every day and came straight home after school to connect with him. Chatting for 5 hours was a daily thing for us. In hindsight, my family probably wondered what I was doing, but they never said a thing. Anyway, isolating myself in my room wasn't abnormal at this point. I was so grateful for my artistic friend. I could be as dark and confident as I wanted when we talked. I unloaded a lot of my pain onto him, and he told me about his troubles too. Tom even started to write poetry about me. Happy poetry. It made me feel special, because I had softened this angry dude's heart with my friendship, or at least that's what I thought. He was reliable, and always online whenever I came home. After maybe 3 weeks of talking, Tom asked me for my phone number because he said he wanted to hear my voice. I was extremely uncomfortable with this and reluctant, but he insisted and gave me his number to call. Fearing I would lose a friend who was so important to me, I finally gave in. I should mention that I'm about 35 now, and I'm still a shy person, but at 15, I was painfully awkward and detested phone calls. My heart was racing, and I was shaky and sweaty as the phone rang. Tom picked up. "Hello?" My voice sounded shaky. Tom spoke. I knew his age, but to my relief, he sounded like a teenage boy. This made me feel less uncomfortable, but still a bit weirded out. I had no idea what to talk about, and for some reason, I felt like crying. Tom and I spoke for a while. He laughed at the awkward things I said, so I guess the conversation went all right. Honestly, I can't remember what we talked about, but what I do remember is that he barely spoke at all. We got off the phone and talked some more online. He said how happy he was to hear my voice. I was still pretty upset, but glad that I didn't disappoint him. I hoped he wouldn't ask me to call him again because it was such a stressful experience. But I had poured so much time into talking to this man that I was willing to be uncomfortable to preserve our friendship. My self-esteem at that point was pretty much non-existent. The next day, though, Tom wanted me to call again. On the phone, I could hear him breathing heavily. It was clear that he was touching himself. I talked about my day at school, some random thoughts that popped into my mind. He stayed silent, apart from the breathing. Then, when I was mid-sentence, he hung up on me. When I asked him what had happened over AIM, he told me I wasn't talking about anything sexy, something along those lines. I apologized and felt a total sense of failure. The conversation then turned sexual. I told him that I was a virgin. In reality, I hadn't even had my first real kiss yet. Tom was overjoyed by this. Now I really had his attention. At this point, it was May. Our relationship progressed to the point that I let him jerk off to my voice, and even sent him some pictures of me in my underwear when he asked. I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt like I had to obey him, or he wouldn't be my friend. He started to write poetry about taking a girl's virginity. To his fans on DeviantArt, they were just fictional poems about some fictional girl. But I knew they were really for me. This both thrilled me and made me queasy. My 16th birthday was coming up in June. Tom and I constantly talked about how badly we wanted to see each other. In the back of my mind, I really missed the days before everything got so sexual. I told him there was no way I could ever fly to Florida, where he lived. But Tom insisted on seeing me before my 16th birthday. Eventually, we picked a date. He found a hotel near my family's house that was relatively affordable, and even bought tickets to fly out. The plan was that I would skip school that day and spend the day with him so that he could take my virginity. I can't remember if he was even going to stay more than one day, to be honest. Before we said our goodnights, Tom wrote, "Will you let me get your ass too?" Not a question, a statement. I came home from school one day, and my mom was extremely solemn. She told me she knows about Tom. Apparently, I had remained signed in on AOL, but I think she actually got my password to see what I was up to. I began to cry, and I even defended Tom at first, but then I admitted I was terrified of him. I was so ashamed that my mom saw our sexual conversations, but she hugged me and told me, "He won't be coming, I promise." She emailed Tom, which really fucking spooked him. Tom began to yell at me and blow up my phone. He told me he spent $500 on the plane tickets that he couldn't get back. I never picked up any of his calls. He wrote me tons of emails in all caps. I even have a few of them saved. He wrote angry, violent poetry on DA about how I betrayed him. I was devastated, and I hated myself. On the day Tom was supposed to come visit, I stayed at my best friend's house, which was miles away in a totally different community. My mother gave our apartment building a photo of Tom to make sure nobody let him in. I was totally paranoid that he would pop up for a while after that, but he never did. He even stopped submitting all art and poetry. Over a month went by, and Tom was still MIA. My family and I went to Canada for a music festival. Life was slowly going back to normal, and my guilt was starting to fade. Suddenly, in our hotel room, my phone rang. It was Tom. I tried to pick up, and I can't remember why, but for some reason, since we were in Canada, I couldn't talk to him. I think it had something to do with the fact that I had an American service provider, or something like that. In any event, he left me messages. Now, my memory of this is pretty foggy. He may have actually been texting me, but I don't remember. A few days later, we took a train back to the US, and as soon as we crossed the border, I sent him a text. I apologized for what happened and explained that I was in Canada, but that I missed him and I hoped that he could forgive me. Tom told me the reason that he was gone for so long. He said that on the day he was supposed to come see me, he got very drunk and tried to take his own life. He stabbed himself all over, including his stomach, left hand, and legs. Feeling last-minute regret, he called his mother and she called the authorities. He told me that his whole apartment was considered a biohazard from all the blood, and after he recovered, he spent time in the psych ward. Tom had mutilated himself so badly that the hospital had to amputate his left leg, and he even lost 2 fingers. He told me unequivocally, this was my fault. I was utterly speechless, and my blood ran ice cold. I refused to believe him, but lo and behold, he uploaded some pictures of himself on DeviantArt. His leg had been taken above the knee, and he was indeed missing fingers. I had seen previous photos of him. This was my friend, all right. It's hard to explain how I feel about the situation. I feel sad for Tom, but I also understand that this wasn't my fault. I was a lonely kid and desperate for a friend. Tom was a schizophrenic man and a pedophile, as was later revealed by his explicit poetry about little girls. Eventually, he was banned from DeviantArt, and I never talked to him again after the age of 16. A few years ago, I looked him up and found his profile on a different site. Now, admittedly, I was Googling him to see if he was still alive. In his profile picture, he was next to a young woman with his hand over her mouth. It looked like he found someone who was willing to visit him after all. So Tom, while I hope you're okay, even 20 years after our first interaction, I'm still content to never meet you.